Good afternoon. Welcome to EduSet Network. Friend, as you know, this week we have organized series of lecture on education policy and budgetary allocation. In last two lectures, we saw how the education policy related to higher education evolved over the years, and its focus area, major turning points. So we talked in detail about the higher education. And as we have already mentioned that for a quality education, integrated approach is needed. So naturally, at primary level, secondary level, and then tertiary level, only then it will fruitful. So in today's lecture, our focus would be to understand what the policy of the government of India have been in regard to the primary education. And so we are going to discuss Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan because it has been a turning point in the school education. So I think you will come to know the various facets, various dimensions of Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan and also other policies related to the primary education. So and for discussion on this topic, we have in the studio an academician, eminent educationist, Dr. C.V. Sharma. He is presently Director of Distance Education Program, Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, project of MHRD, and also Professor of Education in Indira Gandhi National Open University. So I think knowledge and experience will help us to understand not only a theoretical aspect of Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, but also the practical aspect and the challenges what we face. So on your behalf, I welcome Dr. C.V. Sharma for EduSet lecture. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much. And let me once again welcome all my viewers and learners spread across the country and those who are watching this program through the UGC CEC network. Well, as Dr. Amrendra has already explained, we are discussing education policy related to various sectors this week. Yesterday and day before they had discussed on higher education. Today we will be discussing the policies related to primary education, what we now also call as the elementary education, that is classes 1 to 8. Well, since independence in 1947, the emphasis was on higher education. The country realized that we need well-educated people to serve the nation, industries, establishments. But slowly we realized that most of those who join education at an early age get filtered out or pushed out, and only a very small number reaches higher education. Around 1990, this participation in higher education was 6% of the relevant age group. That is, between 18 to 24, only about 6% of the population got access to higher education. 1990, we look at the policies, and since then there is a policy shift. Well, I am sure you would all understand, education changes lives. Education is the key to success, to more income and prosperity. But then, if children are not given access to education, or even those who are given access to education are pushed out, then only a small number would remain and they would benefit from the system. How does that education affect? The first and the most important thing would be that one who is well educated would earn more, because those who are educated, hold degrees, would get good jobs. And those who remain out of the educational system will have to compromise on low income, so bad quality of life. At the time of independence, we decided to spend more on two sectors. One was industry, the other was health. It was perhaps the understanding of the nation that if the health of the country is good, if our children are healthy, if our citizens are healthy, perhaps we would have a better nation. But I think by the 80s we realized that in spite of all care, all spread of health facilities, the people were not able to take benefit of health provisions because they did not realize the importance of it. Education is important to make people understand why it is important to drink clean and safe water. But those who are not educated would not understand how to preserve water, how to drink safe water, how to maintain hygiene. So, most of the expenditure on health went waste. Our programs like family planning, sanitation, water could not really reap fruit because people did not understand the importance of it, because people were largely illiterate. And as I mentioned, only about 6% of the 18 to 24 age group reached class 12 or passed class 12. So, it was important to put an emphasis on primary education so that if not everyone, the large majority of the population would be educated and the benefit of the policies and plans would reach the larger number. In spite of the fact that we spent a large amount on higher education, because if you look at the number of colleges, universities that were available, they were sufficient for this 6% population that went into higher education. But then the fact remained that all those who were illiterate did not understand the importance of education. They did not send their children to school, or even if they sent their children to school, they were pushed out because they could not perform well. So, illiteracy generated more illiteracy, poverty generated more poverty, and they remained out of the whole system of education. 1990, there was a world conference, and there it was discussed that more children should be brought to school, and especially in the developing nations, because education is important and it should be focused on primary education. So, in 1990 there was a conference at Jomtien, Bangkok, where it was decided that we will have a project or a plan to bring in more children to school. Today it is known as the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. What is Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan about? The Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan is a project to bring all children between the age of 6 to 14 to the school, because if the children of this age group are brought to school, perhaps in another 15 to 20 years, we will have completely literate society. But young children who are below or at the age of 6, perhaps they cannot travel far, and as I have mentioned, that children would find it difficult to reach a school because parents do not give enough support, they do not understand the importance of education. So, the government promised that we would have a primary school, that is lower primary, class 1, 2, 3 or 4, at a distance of 1 kilometer, which the child of perhaps 5 or 6 years can walk and reach. This was important because if the distance was more, children would not be sent to school, they would not themselves be able to go to school, or parents would not drop them at the school because they did not understand the importance of education. So, if 6 to 9 or 10 have a school at a distance of about 1 kilometer, every child would go to the school, and if there is a school, the elementary class, the class 5 to 8 at a distance of 3 kilometer, then perhaps every child below the age of 14 would be in a school. So these things are promised in the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, that there would be a school for every child. For the lower primary, it will be at a distance of 1 kilometer, and for the upper primary, it will be at a distance of 3 kilometers. But even if the children are in a school and parents send them to school, perhaps children would not be able to remain there because they need to earn their food. If you look at the poor families, you will find that a child of about 5 or 6 or 7 starts earning, contributing to the earning of the family. So parents who are poor would not like to send their children to school because the income would get affected. So conjoined with the whole Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, it was imagined, or it was thought, that if we do not provide children food, then one, they would not come to school, as they have to contribute to family income. Perhaps parents would sacrifice their contribution if they are provided food. And second more important thing was that children can be given good food so that they don't remain malnutritioned. It has again been found through research that malnutrition, weak children are not able to concentrate and are not able to read or understand, so their performance is poor. So within this scheme, it was provided for to provide midday meal to children, so that one, they are healthy, second, they come to school for the midday meal. And once the access has been provided, children have been brought to school, the major issue would be to retain them in school till the age of 14. So all children are brought to the school, they are given access and they are retained in the school so that they can learn, and by the time of 14 they are able to show some results. At least they understand the importance of hygiene, they understand the importance of cleanliness, they are able to read and write, so they are able to access sources of knowledge independently. It was thought, and it is now believed, that if children are in school till the class of 8, they should be able to read, write and access sources of knowledge independently, so that whenever they want to know about something, they are able to learn on their own, making them independent learners. That is why the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, the primary education, incorporated up to class 8, and this is what is visualized, that if children are in school till class 8, then we will have a nation where nobody is illiterate and the importance of education is understood. 1, 2, this can percolate down in the society. Perhaps children of families which are illiterate can go and in turn inform their parents, educate their parents about the importance of education and other related aspects of development. What are the goals of elementary education? So, universal access to learning and schooling. Most important thing is to give universal access. No child should remain outside the ambit of education, so that if by the time all children are brought into the school, there is nobody who is illiterate and out of school. Research showed that parents generally give emphasis on the education of the boys and girls remain outside. However, I must mention that there are communities where boys are discriminated against and girls are given preference, like the Khasi society. It has also been found through studies that in the Meghalaya, Khasi region, parents give emphasis to the education of the girl child because the girl child remains at home and the boy is married off to another family. The boy is not given preference of education. However, the general rule remains that parents generally prefer to send the male child to the school for education, spend on the education of the male child and do not give support to the education of the female child. So, Another major emphasis of the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan is to bring all children, including the girls, to the schools, and besides the boys and the girls, the those sections of society which have remained undeveloped and outside the ambit of development, like the Dalits, the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribe, the other backward classes, the minority communities. So, provisions have been made to give more support to such groups, including the children with special needs. So, if all these groups are brought to the school and through all the efforts they are retained in the school, perhaps it is thought that by the time they are 14, they would be able to learn and learn to a satisfactory level. However, studies show that in spite of the fact that children have remained in the school, their learning levels have not shown satisfactory levels. So, there are two things which are now being emphasized are education of satisfactory quality, that is satisfactory level of outcomes, and broadening the scope of primary education and environment of schooling. The points 4 and 5 what are mentioned, that even if the children remain in a school till the age of 14 but do not show levels of learning, then all this effort and resources are lost. It is important, and we are now emphasizing on quality of education, because it has been found that even those children who remained in the school till the age of 14, they did not show levels of learning that was expected. Major studies have shown that the children of class say 5 could not read the textbooks of class 3 or 2, and those in class 6 or 7 could not read the books of class 4 or 5. Their levels of learning lagged behind. Now, the effort is to augment the quality. I believe, and you would agree with me, that initially the problem was to bring all children to school, that is providing access. We are at a level now where we have provided almost complete access to all children to school. Then now is the time to put the focus on the quality of education, and we are now trying to do that. There are various efforts made. One was the minimum levels of learning developed and designed by the NCERT, but then there was a lot of criticism and we have withdrawn. This year we are discussing in the joint review mission and reviews of various states that we must decide and focus on what would be the learning levels after each year in the school. That is, what would the child learn after class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4, and so on till class 8. It has been found that children, in spite of the fact that they were in the school till class 8, they could not read or write or add, subtract or multiply or divide. So, the situation is alarming, and we are now emphasizing on the quality of education. What was the reason behind taking up this project? As I mentioned earlier, and I would now like to dwell a bit on this, that in 1990 there was a conference organized by the World Bank in Jomtien, Thailand, Bangkok, where representatives of 155 countries assembled to decide on the menace of illiteracy, and India was one of the countries participating, and we are a signatory to the Jomtien Declaration. It was said that by 2015, we must aspire and bring all children to school and provide education of a certain quality, a acceptable level of quality. So, 1990, we had a project which was named as the District Primary Education Program. The agenda of this conference was to eradicate illiteracy and bring all children to the school so that they are there for the next 8 or 10 years, and by the time 2015 reaches, we have a whole generation of learners who are literate. You will understand this was a massive job, and we are trying and hopefully by 2015 all children below the age of 14 would be in school and would have a certain level of quality education. In this conference, the declaration was adopted which is known as the World Declaration Education for All, Universalization of Elementary Education, UEE. So 1990 onwards, the countries which had large number of illiterate mass put the emphasis on primary education instead of the higher education, and India is one of the leading nations. Let me go back and mention that till 1990 the emphasis was on higher education. Major portion of the education budget went to higher education. But since the 1990 and the Jomtien conference where India signed this declaration, emphasis has been put on primary education and a lot of money has been spent. The Jomtien conference assessed that nearly 2/3 of the illiterate population is in the developing world, and of this the majority, that means 50% of the illiterate were in the South Asian country, that is India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Maldives, Nepal and Bhutan. This was alarming, and India being the major nation, majority of the illiterate were in India. So it was important that we refocus our education policy from higher education to primary education, and in 1990 we did this. Since 1990 we have been putting a lot of emphasis on primary education, and what I mentioned was there was no school available to children at a reasonable distance. So the problem was that children could not go to school. Even if they went to school, the process of schooling was such that they could not continue with the school. A major issue in retention after giving access has been the issue of language. Providing education in a language which is comprehensible to the children. If you look at primary education, there is an overemphasis on English medium schools, and children went to school, but then when education was provided in a language which was totally alien to them, they could neither understand nor perform. And as the process of education was, the evaluation was through 6 months or year based assessment. What happened that children with who came from families where there was no culture of English, or parents did not know English, they could not perform in the class because they could not understand the lectures. Now, since the DPEP, a lot of emphasis has been on education through mother tongue. We have been able to provide education in the languages of the 8th schedule, the national languages, but we are also trying to provide education in tribal languages and lesser known languages. If you look at the tribal languages, primers have been developed for classes 1 to 5 or 6, and then switch over to the major language of the area, that may be say Hindi or Tamil or Kannada or whatever. Those who would like to take education in English can switch over to English even in these schools. But a major issue has been of language. Children who did not have exposure to English or a standard language, say tribal children who did not know Hindi but were provided education in Hindi, like the tribal areas of Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan, Bihar, Odisha, they could not understand the major language of the area, that is Hindi or Odia or Tamil for that matter. Even if these children were provided access to school and taught in the local language, they could not understand and they could not perform well. So a major issue has been of deciding on the medium of instruction. It is very difficult to provide education in all mother tongues. We have about 3,500 plus languages in India, and you will yourself realize that it's nearly impossible to provide education to every child in the mother tongue. However, ideally every child should be provided education in the mother tongue, because by the time the child comes to school at the age of about 6, one has spent more than 7,000 hours learning that language, the mother tongue. But when the child is in the school and the education or the lectures are delivered in a language which is not the mother tongue of the child is completely out of place, is not able to understand. However, we think that all those living in the Hindi speaking areas like Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Bihar, Jharkhand, they would naturally be speakers of Hindi, which is not true. If you look at the Santalis, the Udaons, the Munda, the Kuruks, the Khadiyas, they do not speak the major language of the area, they speak a tribal language. So, one major change and major effort which has been put is to provide education in the mother tongue, so that children are not out of place in the school, the primary classes. Once they have acclimatized in the process of schooling, because you would realize that the transition from home to school has been or would be very drastic for any child of about 6 years. So, first the child is out of place, and second, the language of communication, the language of teaching is alien to the child, so the child would find oneself totally out of water. So, in universalization of education, the major hindrance has been providing education in the mother tongue. It's not that we have now realized the importance of education, or the nation is promising education to every child. Right at the time of the making of the constitution, we had promised through Article 45 of the directive principles of the state policy that the state shall endeavour to provide within a period of 10 years from the commencement of the constitution for free and compulsory education for all children until they complete the age of 14 years. This was a promise when the nation gave to itself the constitution in 1950. So, the expectation was that by 1960 every child would have access to school and be provided free and compulsory education. These two terms, free and compulsory, need to be understood. Free means the child would not be charged any fees, but then how about those children who come from poor families and contribute to the income of the family? The parents would not like to send their children to school because that would amount to reduction in the family income. So, it is not only important to provide, not to charge fees, but to also provide them with food and other things that the schooling would require. What would the schooling require? One would be the textbooks, the second would be uniform which they wear and come to the school, shoes of a decent quality, so that all children in a particular school are at one level when they come to school. If we don't provide, the children would be wearing different types of dresses, and that would create again a class society in the school. So, free does not only mean not charging fees, but it would also mean that children be provided for other facilities which they would have otherwise earned. The second term, compulsory, is also important. What would compulsory mean? Would it be the wish of the child or his or her parents, or would it not depend upon the wish of the parents? Initially, when the nation was debating, the onus was put on the parents, that compulsory would mean that parents bring their child to school, get them admitted in a school, otherwise they would be punishable. However, through negotiation and dialogue, this clause was withdrawn. This clause was withdrawn because we realized that most of the children would come from families which are illiterate. Parents don't understand the rule, the law, the constitution. So, even if their children are not coming, it's not their fault, but they can be charged if it is made a condition through the act. But this was withdrawn, and a lot of emphasis is now on the primary schools and the staff, the principal and the teachers, to ensure that every child below the age of 14 in the vicinity of the school is in the school and not sitting at home or involved in other day-to-day activities or labor. So, as I mentioned that after the 1990 Jomtien Conference, India was a signatory, and we developed and designed a program which was named as the District Primary Education Program. Initially, it started in 1994. Initially, 42 districts in 7 states participated, and this was in fact the pilot which gave us the understanding of how to make primary education universal, what we have been calling as the universalization of elementary education. This program was funded by the World Bank and other funders. The World Bank, the European Union, the British Department for Foreign Development, DFID, Department for International Development, and other agencies. But by the end of 1990s, it was realized that we were paying a lot of interest on the money, and the government came with the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan in the year 2000-2001. The Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan was a product of a review of the DPEP or the UEE, Universalization of Elementary Education, as Dakar in 2000. India again committed to achieve total literacy by the year 2015, and after the Dakar conference, India started 2000-2001 the SSA, which initially some states adopted. By 2003 or 4, all states had implemented the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, and today the complete nation is covered by the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. What is the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan? Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan is funded by the cess that is charged on the income of the taxpayers and other money that the government of India gives. There are other funders, foreign funders, but the funding is nominal. Majority or the major amount of the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan comes through our own funding. It's a strong program in the sense that we do not have to pay interest on the money that we borrow to implement this program, and we are able to collect a lot of money to spend on education. However, as this program succeeded, and it has been a great success, it's a great success story for India, and the world is amazed at the success of the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan in India. We had to bring about a right to education, because Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan primarily ensured what was enshrined in the Article 45 of the Constitution, that every child would be provided free and compulsory education. So, in the year 2009, the government of India brought a Right to Education Act. In fact, I would like to remind that if my viewers have any question, they can call now and ask the question, because I would love if it is a dialogue and not a monologue from this side. So, if you have any questions or queries on what I have been discussing, please call us and ask your question. Till I get your question, I will go ahead with what I was mentioning, that in 2009 the government brought in a Right to Education Act. Before that, there was an amendment to the Constitution, and Right to Education was brought as a section of it, and the complete act was not really presented or passed. So, all the provisions that we visualize should be there in making education not only universal, but also quality education was brought into this act in 2009. The bill was presented in the Parliament in the month of August, and it was passed, but this was promulgated on 1st of April 2010, which means the nation had promised to the Parliament and the government had promised to the nation that by 1st of April 2015 we would be able to implement this act completely. It is one of the rare acts which the Prime Minister himself dedicated to the nation in his speech to the nation on 31st March 2010, and dedicated the act to the nation. And the Prime Minister and the government had asked for 5 years period from the nation, so that we can work on it and make it completely effective from the 1st of April 2015, what we had promised in our declaration at Jomtien and also at Dakar, that India would completely universalize elementary education by the year 2015. So, when the Right to Education Act was passed, the SSA norms have also been accordingly revised to harmonize with the SSA norms, and the right to education in fact only assists the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, or both are in fact complementary to each other, the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan and the Right to Education Act. Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan promises to do what the Right to Education has promised to the nation through the act. So what are the indicators? Even if the child is given access to a school, the child remains in the school and passes out from class 1 to 8, there was one important thing that we had mentioned, that there would not be any examination I am saying, and not tests, because it was found that most children drop out of the school when they are said that they are a failure. I would like to delve on this issue a bit, because there is a lot of misunderstanding about this. We stopped the examination after 4 months, 6 months or a year, because at the end of the term or the year, when you tell a child that you have failed and the parents know that my child has failed, then they do not seem inclined to keep their child in the school or retain their child in the school. The consequence would be the child would drop out, what we normally call as the pushed out child, because the father or the mother or the parents do not understand what is the consequence of this failure. They realize that the child has been out of the work for a year and still could not learn anything. So it was important to retain the child, so that in due course, when the child is able to overcome the transition from the home to the school and able to acclimatize with the processes of the school. Imagine a child of 6 years who comes to the school and finds a completely new system. The family has a system which the child gets familiar with in the 5-6 years, but when the child comes to school, there is a new system. So the child has to also understand the system and adjust to the system. The first important thing is to make schools inclusive. It is important to make schools inclusive because there are various types of children who come to school. There are children who come from rich families, there are children who come from poor families, there are children who are mentally, physically deprived or socially deprived. They come from communities which have been traditionally deprived of all these facilities or who have remained undeveloped. What I mentioned as the Dalits or the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, the physically challenged children, children with special needs. So the first important challenge is to make schools inclusive. You will remember that till a few years back, perhaps 5 or 10 years back, we had special schools for the blind, for the physically handicapped. But again we have realized that if we live in a society together, we do shopping together, we go to the market together, we don't discriminate against the children who are physically deprived, then why make schools exclusive for certain groups or certain children? It is always important to live together, learn together and grow together. The first and the most important thing is to make schools inclusive, where boys and girls, gender discrimination, physically handicapped, socially deprived, they all live together and learn together. Then there is the issue of bringing those disabled to the school, those who have disabilities, bringing them to school, and if they are not able to come to school, because if there are some children who have disability of more than 90%, they would not be able to leave the bed or have to be placed only at a particular place, then Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan also promises, or the Right to Education also promises, to provide a school, a special trainer for these children who would go to the families, who go to home and educate or provide education to the children. When schools are made compliant for children with special needs, all schools must have ramps, handrails, toilets for the disabled friendly, the toilet for the disabled. Let me mention at this point of time that there have been researches, and it was found that a large number of girls and children with handicap dropped out of school because there were no toilets. Toilet is an important addition to the school, because if the child cannot go to a decent toilet, especially the girls would drop out, and this was a study in Haryana. Most of the girls dropped off the school after the primary classes because there was no toilet in the school. The Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan and the Right to Education Act compulsorily provide for toilets for boys, girls and children with special needs. They also must have access, so ramps have to be created, rails have to be put, and toilets have to be constructed for special need children. Some children may need residential facilities, like children who come from very far flung areas where the population is very small and a school cannot be provided. So residential facilities for children of such categories who are not able to stay at home, or there are no facilities at home for pursuing education. So residential facilities for special category children are to be created. Then there would be the children who have remained out of school. You will realize that a large number of children who are above the age of 6, 7 or even 14 and they have not been to school, if they are not brought into the schooling process, the whole generation would remain out of school. So provision has been made to mainstream out of school children. Those children who are either working or who have otherwise remained out of schooling process, so it is important to mainstream such children. What are the provision? What would be the challenges of mainstreaming out of school children? One would be they are above the relevant age. That means say a child of about 8 or 9 years is out of school, so the child has already lost perhaps 3 or 4 years of schooling. How do we bring that child to the school? We cannot bring the child and put in class 6 because the child has not learned anything. The age of the child would be high and he or she would not be able to adjust with the children of class 1, that is 6-year-old. So there is a provision of providing them bridge course through specially trained teachers who would be able to teach these children and compensate for the loss that they have incurred in all these years. So one major challenge is to mainstream children who are above the age of 6 and have remained out of school. Two issues are important. One is training the teachers who would mainstream these children and preparing textbook for these children, because their textbook would have to be different. They cannot be given the complete syllabus, perhaps bridge the content and give them so that they are able to get back to the relevant class of their age. And as I mentioned, that one important indicator of a successful Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan or primary education would be providing free textbook and uniform to children. To retain children in the school, it is important to have good quality drinking water, toilets, as I mentioned, for girls, boys and the disabled. What do we mean by good quality drinking water? The Supreme Court has recently passed a judgment that by 1st of April 2013, every school must have good quality drinking water available, that is running water, not only for drinking but also for toilets. If there are toilets, they must be supplied with running water, otherwise the toilets would not be hygienic and children would not use, and even if they use, they would fall ill. The Supreme Court has passed this order, and the government, the nation, has to ensure that by 1st of April 2013, every school has hygienic toilets where there is running water available and good quality drinking water also available. And as I mentioned, that evaluation is a process which has dissuaded children from, a large number of children, from continuing at the school, because parents found that the quality was not good, the children did not learn, and so the parents withdrew them from the school. The provision of continuous and comprehensive evaluation has been brought in. What is this continuous and comprehensive evaluation? It is shifting the focus from the child to the teachers. It is the teacher who has to ensure that every child learns and is able to cope with the other peer group, the friends of the class. Quite often teachers think that they have to do evaluation every day or every week, which is not true. Continuous evaluation means that teacher would keep an eye on every child and keep recording which child has been coping up with the developments, learning as the teacher has been teaching, and record in a document which child behaves in a certain manner, in which areas does the child show good results, shows inclination, so that this document can be used at a later stage to put the child to relevant areas. So, continuous and comprehensive evaluation has to be adopted instead of the term end or terminal examination, what has been the mode of evaluation. But then, as I was mentioning, and we all have now understood, that parents are important component in fulfilling the promise of universalizing elementary education. Without the cooperation of the parents, children would not remain in school, and if they don't remain in school, how can they learn? How can they be made literate or educated citizens? Similarly, besides the parents, the community help, the support of the community is very important. A school is a part of the community and has been a part and parcel of the Indian community. However, we find that the interest of the community in schooling has slowly dwindled, and community normally does not take very great interest in supporting the school. It is very difficult, rather impossible, for any nation of the magnitude and size of India to support education and educational institution of to provide good quality education through the budget allocations. It is important that the community itself comes forward and supports the school, which must become a part of the schooling process or the social development process. Community development or community participation has huge benefits. One important aspect is that the community members feel a part of the school, they take decision, they are part of the decision making process, so they support the decisions. The Right to Education Act has made provision for a school management committee, which is an integral part of the school and which would really make policies for the school and get them implemented. So, it is said that 75% of the school management committee members would be from the society, and the total membership of the school management committee would be of women, because we find that most often it is the woman, the mother, the housekeeper who decides where would the child be and who would take care of the child. Fathers are normally not responsible for the activities of the child or taking care of the child. It is the mother who takes care. So, the mothers would know what to do and how to plan the school so that the children are comfortable. So, it has been said through the Right to Education Act that there has to be a school management committee, SMC, where the 75% of the membership would come from the community members and 50% of the participation would be of women, so that they are able to decide how the school would be run. Besides this, this SMC, the the school management committee would decide on the budget of the school, the number of teachers and other activities. However, there has been reaction from people that in quite a large part of the country, there are not enough members who understand the process of schooling, who understand education. So, they are not able to really guide the school management committee what plans to take up and how to implement them. Initially, a member of the community had to chair this school management committee, but of late it has been decided that the headmaster or the principal of the elementary school would be the chair of the SMC. But then the SMC would decide on the number of teachers of various subjects or disciplines, and this committee would also approve the budget of the school. The budget would then be given to the Gram Panchayat, which will approve the budget and make allocation for the school. So, you will see that the Gram Panchayat, the community, the parents, they all have been brought into the management of the school, which is important. If the community does not support the school, then it will be difficult for the school to survive. One, because the funding would not be enough. Second, because the community would not maintain the facilities. One is they would not send the child, even if they send, they would not support the other activities and the facilities of the school. So, at times we have also found that community has come forward in constructing the building and boundary wall and things like that. It is very important that the community contributes maybe in terms of labor to the school, so that the boundary wall is built, the playground is built, because they ultimately benefit the children. So, all the time expecting the government to allocate a budget to construct the boundary wall or to prepare the playground or to maintain the building, to repair the building, perhaps we can take help from the community and community can become partners in the whole schooling process. Even if these are available, children may not be able to learn, because teachers are important component of the whole process. Teachers need to be trained, they need to understand the children and the learning process, what contributes to learning. Unfortunately, the teachers have not been adequately trained and they do not have the relevant understanding of the subject or the discipline. Maybe one reason is that teachers are not paid well, so the best ones have not been opting for the teaching profession. Now, under the right to education, it has been made compulsory that every teacher would have the relevant degree, and when I say relevant degree, I mean that those teachers who have been trained in teaching to classes 1 to 8. Previously, those who had a B.Ed degree is for teaching the adolescents, that is roughly classes 9 to 12. They were put in classes 1 to 6. They did not understand what is a primary child, what is a 6-year-old. So, it has been now made compulsory through the Right to Education Act that every teacher who teaches in a primary school must have a relevant degree to teach the adolescent, the children below the age of 14, that is 6 to 14. And a teacher would be responsible for a class of 1:30. And states have been given certain flexibility. They can decide on any norm between 1 teacher to 30 to 35 or 40 children, but not more than that. So, states have to decide on this. Besides, the Right to Education Act also makes it compulsory that all teachers must be trained at regular intervals to cope up with the changes, not only in the disciplinary knowledge, but also in the pedagogy. Through regular research and experiments, various new things come into the pedagogy. How to teach children, what makes children learn faster and learn more, all these things must be told or trained to the teachers, otherwise they would be doing what they learned in their first degree. Right to Education Act makes it compulsory that teachers not only undergo these the training which informs them about the latest pedagogic developments, but they also update their disciplinary knowledge. So, the Right to Education Act has also made it compulsory that all teachers teaching to classes 1 to 8 must undergo training at regular intervals. Another issue is of curriculum. Since the time we decided on National Curriculum Framework, it has been found that at certain places in most of the rural areas or far-flung areas, the curriculum is not found very relevant and the children are not able to comprehend and not able to learn. So, it has been now realized and made a part of the process that certain part of the curriculum would be decided locally. Only the learning outcomes, the objectives have been provided, and the teacher in the classroom has been given the flexibility or the authority to decide on the curriculum, the case studies that they would take up. Say like fruits, we would not like all children to learn about apples and apple farming, but perhaps the teacher can take up a fruit which is grown locally and discuss with the child how is the plant of the fruit planted, how it grows, what are the benefits of it and things like that. So, children would not be learning something which is alien to them, but children would be doing things which are native, which are relevant and locally available. So, there is some flexibility or provision for local curriculum in the Right to Education Act. Also, because of the poor monitoring of the schools, at times we tend to slip of the quality and we find that the quality of education is not good. The monitoring process has been made local in the sense that the Right to Education makes it compulsory that clusters should be decided, blocks should be decided and teachers should be monitored on a local basis. So, if you look at the Right to Education Act, you will find that all these things have been taken care of which support the free and compulsory education of all children. I would invite all of you to go through the Right to Education Act, which is available on the website of the Ministry of Human Resource Development, Government of India, and look for yourself how can you contribute or what you should know about what is important about providing education to every child and be a partner in the development of education and so the nation.
Okay. Means participation is required at both levels.
Yes, both levels, not only the parents but the community members, the teachers. Only when there is a community which supports education, you cannot expect a whole nation to be educated.
Okay.
And primary is obviously
only then goal can be achieved.
Only then the goal of universal elementary education, universal education can be achieved.
Okay. So, well friends, with this word we conclude the lecture. I thank all of you for watching the lecture, and on your behalf I thank Dr. C.V. Sharma for giving such an insightful lecture on this great topic. Thank you.